Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Bella, and if you're a new listener, welcome to the Inner Group Chat. And if you're a returning listener, I am so glad that you came back because we have so much to catch up on. First off, the last week, I don't know what's happened. I just feel very you know how last podcast episode, I was really nervous to post it, I can't lie. When I was editing it on the train, I was like, why did I choose to do a topic on this? Why did I choose to put myself out there? It was a risky topic to do when there was no time to redo. But I edited it and I was like, do you know what? We're just going to post it. And some of you have sent really nice messages about it. And that has made the podcast feel well worth posting because it was a bit of a scary one to post. And I did feel a bit out of my comfort zone, but we did it. And I'm proud of myself for posting it anyway. But for this week's podcast episode, I wanted to discuss another thing that I've been thinking a lot about, which is my move from London and the fact that I don't live there anymore. And if you didn't follow me on Instagram, first off, why not? Guys, you need to be following me so then we can keep up to date all of the time. If you don't follow me, then you might not know, but I've been in London for the last week and I came back on Friday and had the weekend in Manchester. And every time I'm in London, it just transports me back to an era of my life where I lived there. I lived there for nearly 2 years, not quite 2 years, but nearly 2 years, where I completed my master's and I worked. And then I moved to Manchester working for the same company. And so it was a big chunk of my life, and it was the first time that I properly moved somewhere and felt like it was home. Felt like I have created my own life here, and I've done that, and it was a massive step for me. And I think leaving it was also a massive step for me. And it's been something every time I go back, because a lot of people that I moved there and were there with me there, they're still there now. And so when I go back and I go to see people, it's often just me that's left, and it's not hard as in it's actually hard, but it's weirdly you can see a mirror of what your life could have been quite easily, how things could have worked out, the way it could have all fallen. And it's not that I want to change anything or that I think I should have stayed or anything like that. I think it's just, when time's passed and you used to live somewhere and then you don't live there anymore, but everyone else stayed there. And it's weird going back. It's have you been back to your primary school? Because that is weird. Going back to your primary school, I think it was weirder when I was younger. I haven't been back recently, but I'm the eldest, and so when my sisters were going to school, I would go and see them at school, and I would find that really weird, especially when there was a point where I was in year 8, and they'd have been in maybe, I want to say year 2, so young at school, and I just found it really weird to think that they were, going through, everything had changed. Because in your mind, the way you were, because in your mind, school and everything stays the exact same. You stay as a key counter, a key part of it, because it was your everything for so long. And then when you go and revisit these places, you realise they move on. Obviously, they move on. I'm not expecting them to hold a shrine up for me and really, really remember. But do you know what I mean? When these are key environments that you grew up with, to then revisit them and find out actually it's all changed and it's all different and time is really passing. It's not just frozen in time. Can be quite uncomfortable, a bit weird. It's just a bit makes you really think about the fact that time is passing, because I think when I imagine that everything freezes, it makes me think that time is going slower than it actually is. But it is really weird to go back to those environments where other people are having that exact same experience as you were, younger kids going to school, and you remember you going to school, and now they have their friendship and they have their lunch where you, and you're like, oh, it's all just a cycle. It's a cycle, and the cycle's moved on, and it's weird. And going back to London kind of has the same moment for me, but in a weirder point of it's not me returning to childhood me. It's me returning to me being 22, 23. Because when I was in London, I felt so old. I felt so grown up. And I remember going down there and my mum drove us down, and the day before I moved there, well, I kind of did a classic me thing of worked, booked a flight to Bali, went to Bali for a month, came back, moved to London 3 days later, started my master's. And the day we left Bali, I think I now look back at it, it definitely was a panic attack. Because this is not positive, I don't think about things that I have to come. Okay? If I have big, scary, daunting things coming, I'm ignoring that. I'm not thinking about it. University, I had no idea what I was getting myself into for university. No idea whatsoever. Why? Because I didn't research it. I only went to look around one university and was like, yep, perfect, I'll go there. We don't need to think about it anymore. I have a tendency, not anymore because I've noticed this about myself, but if something's going to be scary and new and different and it's a big amount of change, I'm just not going to think about it. I'm just going to ignore it. And now I don't do this. I force myself to think about it and not just ignore it, because then it's not a massive shock to the system when you do leave London and move to Manchester where you don't know anyone apart from your boyfriend. It's not a massive shock to the system, but it was a massive shock to the system then. And I think before I moved to London, I had a massive panic of, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I moving to London? This is so scary and so terrifying. But a common theme has been never letting how I feel about something stop me from doing it. And I'm kind of proud of myself for that. It's never been a thing of, if I feel this anxious about something, I'm not going to do it. I'm never going to let fear of something stop me from doing something. I am always going to do it. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because sometimes it means I put myself in situations where afterwards I'm like, why did we force ourselves into it? I think it means that I'm never going to sit here and think, what if? Because sometimes I do have experiences where I did let how I felt about something dominate. Like, I didn't go abroad for my master's thesis, and sometimes I'm like, I should have done that. I should have done that. But then you have to remember that, like, life happens and there were reasonings there as to why it didn't work out. But I'm glad with London that I didn't have that mindset. I really was like, I'm going and I'm going to see how it goes, and it's exciting and nerve-wracking. And I was really scared moving. Guys, I was so scared. I didn't know anyone. I had my family that lived nearby, like kind of like a 40-minute train out of London. Like, not in London, out of London. And that was comforting, but I really knew no one. And that was scary in itself, to think I'm moving somewhere where I know no one. And I started my master's course, and it was really hard and really difficult. And I remember multiple phone calls with Louis, my boyfriend, being like, I'm going to drop out. I genuinely am going to drop out. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, ever. And it was really hard. It was really difficult, but I still did it, and I didn't drop out because I am not a quitter. I've realised this about myself too. I'm just not going to quit things, even if it's hard and even if it's difficult. I'll always see it through. Benefits and negative things about that, quitting whilst you're ahead, it can be a massive win. But anyway, I think revisiting London over the last week, I went for work, it really reminded me that I am in a different chapter now, and made me think about how much about myself has changed and how much I've grown, how much I've changed. And I think podcast episodes are like this, where you hear someone talking about how much can really change in 2 years. Makes you realise how much really can change in 2 years. Because sometimes when we're living our own lives, we look at our life and think everything is the exact same, nothing is different, nothing has changed, and I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm ever gonna get to where I want to get to, because everything feels the exact same. But it's actually not the case, because everything does change. It just happens slowly, and you've morphed into a version of yourself that is completely different to the version of you that was so key in the previous chapter. And I think the biggest differences between me now and that version of me, I've noticed a lot in like my journaling and me, like general worrying thought patterns. I used to be so obsessed with what people thought about me, and that's not really my worry anymore. Now I'm so obsessed with what I think of me. Do I think I'm doing good enough? Do I think I'm making myself proud? Do I think I'm trying hard enough? Do I think I'm going to make it? Do all of these things, which equally are not the most positive trails of thought to have. Like, we shouldn't, in an ideal world, have those at all. But I think maturing and growing up over the last 4 years has made other people's opinions of me and what they think about me become a lot less relevant than my own opinion of me. And I think, weirdly, even though thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm good enough at this, I don't know if this is going to work out, those aren't the most positive thoughts. I think, weirdly, this reframing into me being the thing I care most about, my own opinion, not my own opinion being the thing I care most about, much more than other people's, that is a positive thing. Because I was so young when I moved to London, and I didn't really know who I was at all. And I think that's okay. I think a lot of us think that we don't know who we are, and we think that's a terrible, awful thing. But the truth is, you're young. I was 22. How was I meant to know who I was? I'd been an adult for 4 years. And in those 4 years, I'd gone to university. There'd been a global pandemic. I'd moved home. And then I worked in Sainsbury's. Do you know, like, how was I meant? You're going to find out a bit about yourself, but you're never going to know yourself, like, know yourself until you're actually put in the big world, until you're making friends, until you're working, until you're creating your own team, until you're actually having to act like an adult. And I'll always be grateful to myself for forcing myself to move to London. Because yes, it was scary, and yes, it was nerve-wracking, but it forced me into an environment where I had to grow up and work out who I wanted to be and work out how I could become that person that I wanted to be. Because I could have come to Manchester straight away and lived with my boyfriend and been closer to my family, and it would have been easier and financially the better decision. Okay, I know this now. I have £70,000 of like debt from my student finances, but we don't talk about that. But anyway, we don't talk about student debt. We just ignore it, okay? And I don't know if that's the most positive approach, but I just don't need to ruin my day with it, okay? But anyway, I look back at the version of me that went there, and it was weirdly important to me that I could create my own life. I think there was elements of my character that I doubted, and I'd always been a massive home bird, and I loved being with my family and my mum, my dad, and got on really well with them, and didn't, I was very happy at home and could very easily be very content being happy at home. And that was that. And I was kind of worried because I didn't have this massive friendship group that everyone else had. There was, like, it's just not embarrassing to say out loud, but like, I was worried that I like really struggled to make friends, and that was something that there was like something wrong with me. That I couldn't make friends as easily as everyone else. That things weren't sticking and I couldn't work out why. And like that felt confusing, especially in my early 20s, because I remember seeing, especially online, all of these big friendship groups and people having their people, and I don't feel like I had my people. I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who I wanted to be, and I didn't know how to get there, and I just felt quite lost. I felt quite like I wasn't going to find any of that knowledge about myself if I grew in an environment where people already knew me. It was like I needed to go to somewhere where no one had any idea who I was, so I could invent who I wanted to be. I needed that space to grow. And I think that's why London always has a bit of like a special place in my heart, because it was where I first allowed myself to, like, who do you want to be outside of the pressures of who you think you've always had to be, outside of everything you've always thought you had to do. Who do you want to be? Who do you really want to be? Why do you want to be them? And I think it was the first time where I felt like I had like really solid friends that I did regular plans with, because I had friends, but I didn't have the type of friends, I didn't live in the place where we'd have Friday nights together and we'd go to the pub, and I hadn't had that type of proper relationship yet in a consistent adult way, because at university it's different, it is different. And so going to London and experiencing that, I think it allowed me to have those close female friendships, which are so important. They are so important, because it's through that you guys can. It allowed me to have those close friendships, which are so important in realizing how not alone you are in your struggles, because you bond over the same things, you realize you've lived the same things, you realize nothing is that unique. And I think having that London experience allowed me to become a lot more confident in myself. And I look at version of me now, and I've been in Manchester 2 years in August. And I really think I've only properly come into my confidence in the last year. And I think it was leaving London was the first step. I built myself up and I was like, do you know what? I know who I am, and I'm kind of ready for the next step now. I've understood who I am here, but I know that here wasn't home. And I think that's how I always felt with London, that it wasn't a forever home. And it's hard to get settled somewhere that doesn't feel a forever home. And so moving to Manchester always felt like the right thing to do. But then understanding who I was here, it took me stripping back everything again. Because I think you understand yourself in layers, you learn yourself in layers, and you find out about yourself in layers. And a lot of those layers are, when you grow up, stripping yourself right back down to who you were as a child and thinking, what did I love? What did I enjoy? Why did I enjoy it? What did that light up inside me? And finding out those things about yourself takes time, and also takes finding unique experiences. It also takes experiencing unique things. And by that, I mean, you're going to be placed in situations that you won't know how you act in them until you're placed in them. And you're placed in them, and then you have to kind of sink or swim, and then you swim, and then you know way more about yourself. But you don't know how you're going to react in that situation until you're in the situation. And I think we forget that about growing up. A lot of pressure is to like really know yourself and know who you want to be and know who you want to grow up into. But we forget that growing up is a process. that you're not going to have everything figured out all at once. You've got time to figure out who you want to be. You've got space to work out who you want to be. And kind of that journey of working out who you want to be is really beautiful and exciting and should be something that we take a lot of pride in. But also means sometimes we have to treat ourselves like little scientific experiments, which means taking us out of something that we find really comfortable, taking us out of something that feels like something very familiar, which for me meant moving to London and then meant leaving London. And it was only eventually when I left London that I looked at my life and I looked about the things that I'd taken with me. It was my job and my relationship, and I had to create a whole new friendship group. I thought, I'm not actually happy in the job. This isn't for me. I don't want this anymore. And it gave me the courage to step away from that, because sometimes courage, we have to learn that we have it. It's always in us and we're always brave. It's not something that you learn how to be. You're always it. But it's something that we have to prove to ourselves we are, I think. And I think leaving London and being brave and doing something that scared me and thinking and having to recreate all of that gave me the confidence to then be like, do you know what? I don't have to do this job if I'm not enjoying it. I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to leave because life's too short. And I think it made me embody that, like, life is too short to do things that don't make you happy. And the more times you do things that scare you, anything that scares you, the more likely you're going to be up for it another time. The more likely you're going to give it a good go. The more likelihood you're actually going to say, you know what, I am feeling this, but it's not going to stop me. It is not going to stop me. And so leaving London this week made me think a lot about how much I've changed, about how the version of me sat here in front of you now is so different to the version of me that was sat recording the podcast on a bed, but she's also pretty similar. I've grown a lot in confidence, and so much of that is due to doing things that scare me and pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I still care what people think, but the person that I care about is me. And maybe when I'm 28, I won't care anymore because I'll think I'm doing a good job, and that will be the final step. But I think a big step has been I don't care so much what other people think anymore. I value my own opinion so much more than I once did, and I've realised, you know what? I can be confident in me too. I'm so likely to believe in my friends and my boyfriend and my family. I'm so likely to believe in you. Why can't I believe in me too? And I hope that's a lesson that you learn in your early 20s. You know, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out who you want to be and where you want to go. But I think the biggest lesson is learning to trust yourself. It's learning that you don't really make a wrong decision, because any decision you make, you can make a new one, that nothing is ever set in stone, that you can pivot as many times as you want to pivot. But realising that this growing into yourself, working out who you want to be, takes time. You're not going to know yourself straight away. When I think about because I'm doing Picnic at the moment and it's showing me photos. And so much of this time is like me in London, like little selfie on the tube. And I was just so excited about the life that I was living and the things that I could do and the things that I was having in my life. And I'm just feel proud of little me for creating a life there. Like I did that. I created a life on my own, no help from anyone else. And I did that. And now I have that confidence in me to know whatever happens, I can do that. I can create that life for myself. I can work out what I want to do and how I want to do it. And that is something that I wish for you too. Do the things that scare you because it shows you that you can do it. Because you can, it's in you. But sometimes I think I'm too logical. I'm a bit of it's not like an intelligist. It's like an intelligentizer. Basically, I need things to be logical. And so for me to have a point evidence explanation of this worked out here really, really helps me. So to conclude, I revisited London this week and it made me think a lot about how I've changed, how I've grown in confidence, how I've created a life that I'm happy in, and how I've done a lot of things that younger me would have been really proud of. But it also reminded me that it's okay to miss London just a little bit. It's okay to miss these chapters of our lives that feel frozen in time in our minds when actually they're not. And it's okay to reflect on them with a bit of sad. It's okay to miss things from these other chapters. It doesn't mean that you're not happy where you are. And it's good to go back to these places that feel frozen in our minds. I think it's important. Before we go to the question part of the podcast, I need you to send this to one friend that you think is going to enjoy the episode, because if more people find us, more people find us, and then we roll like a snowball and gain momentum. And that's what you can help me to do. Okay, on to the question part of this week's podcast episode. So the first question for this week's podcast is top 3 moments of your January. I would say Going to London this last week was really fun because it made me think so much about how much has changed, but also because I miss my friends there. And so it was really nice to see and just be in London. Like, it's so big and it's so busy, and I love going for a moment. I love leaving, but love going for a moment. And so, top one, I've been on some great hikes this January, can't lie. Like, I have really lent into hiking, and that's been really fun. And I've been much better at proactively seeing my friends. And that's a big step because, to be honest, I can be quite lazy with making plans. I don't like that about myself, and I'm trying to improve it. And so I am proud of myself for that, you know? And final top moment of January. I think I'm becoming a lot more self-aware about the way that I talk to myself and how I am with myself, and asking myself the right questions, even if the questions are hard questions. And I think that feels like a silly top moment, but weirdly it is a top moment because the relationship we have with ourselves, like that is fundamental to every single thing that we do. And I think this has been this month I've really asked myself some of like the trickier questions and been realistic about how I act towards myself and whether I'm nice to myself and what I need to do to improve that relationship with myself. And so I feel proud of myself for that. How do you do a Sunday reset? The way I do a Sunday reset is slow morning, ages getting ready, coffee in bed, reading, writing, journaling. And then I take my purple journal, which you'll know from the Sunday Mail posts, and I reflect on the week that's just gone. I reflect on everything that went well, what didn't go well, how I felt about things, and then I set my goals for the next week. And rather than it being like specific goals, I more set like a purpose, a main aim, and that has been really helpful in not overwhelming myself with what I want to do. And then I clean the flat, not in an intense way, but in like a making sure everything is away and it is a bit nice, because I'm not very good at keeping on top of things in the week. So if it's tidy by me going into the week, then I'm going to keep it tidy throughout. And then, to be honest, I like doing nothing on a Sunday. I like watching films, literally just relaxing. Like, I don't really want to have a day filled with activities. I just want to chill at home because we spend so much money on rent. Like, I do want to have in time to enjoy my flat, you know? And then we'll cook a nice dinner, we'll meal prep, and that'll be my Sunday. And that's been my Sunday now for like all of January, and I have loved it, can't lie. Doing things on a Sunday, I just don't think it's for me, to be honest. I think I just want to chill. I don't know if that's really bad, but it's true. Managing feelings of loneliness. Managing feelings of loneliness. I would say for managing feelings of loneliness, it's tricky because it depends if you're wanting to try and find more friends and you want advice on how to find friends, if you're wanting to like manage loneliness by removing loneliness, or if you're asking because you want to get comfortable in your own company. And if it's the first one, I'm going to say go to the same things over and over. Go to the same gym classes, go to the same coffee shops, go to the same gym classes, to be honest, is quite a good one. Even the same cinema. Go to the same places over and over and over, because you meet friends through seeing the same people over and over, through familiarity. It's why making friends when we're older is so difficult, because we're removed from school. Like, we don't have school anymore to make friends with. And so going to the same places over and over again will introduce you to people, will allow you to meet people. And, you know, to meet people. And I think that can help, especially in new places, new cities. But if you're learning to become more comfortable in your own company, first things first, when you're on your own, stop scrolling. Don't scroll. Because then it's almost like you're having momentary interactions with so many other people that can leave you feeling so much more empty than before, because often content and social media can make us reflect on ourselves and make us feel a bit inadequate. I find anyway, it can make me feel a bit inadequate. And so reflecting on that and reflecting, like having that scrolling moment, it's not that healthy for me. It doesn't work out that well. And so avoiding social media when I am on my own is pretty key. And then I think it's learning that this relationship with yourself is something that you can enjoy. You can do things on your own. You don't have to do things with other people. Finding your own hobbies. I think hobbies and finding out what they could be, especially if they're ones that you're not good at, but you just enjoy them, those are the best types of hobbies. And investing in hobbies as much as you would a skill or a thing at work, I actually think is really important, because it allows you to get to know yourself through things. Because sometimes we don't want to do loads of introspective journaling. Sometimes when we're lonely, that's not actually going to help. But doing something, even if it's just like a paint by numbers whilst you watch your favourite TV show, doing something, I think that can be really helpful. Especially when I was homesick, my mum just always used to tell me, just distract yourself. Just don't think about it, just distract yourself. And we should obviously think about the things that we're struggling with eventually, but sometimes in the moment you just need to distract yourself. And so doing things, finding activities, that's helped me when I'm feeling lonely. And then final piece of advice, make plans with the people around you. Stop waiting for people to make plans with you, because I am so bad at this, waiting for people to make plans with me instead of making plans with them myself. But not anymore, not this year. And so thank you for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. If you don't follow me already, make sure you are following me on Instagram and on TikTok at Mail from Bella, and I can't wait to speak to you again next week. I love you. Bye. Mwah.